Hello, everybody. Boy, that was a fast month since we last met, but here we are already in February. Can you believe it? Welcome, welcome, welcome to the monthly connection. And I want to thank my lovely assistants before we get too far into this. Thank you to Bev for handling all the emails and challenges all day long. And thank you to Lynette for the greeting party and building the energy. She's the pregame show and just could not do this without both of them. And I know you all know how special they are. So again, welcome. I love this new name. Instead of monthly mentoring, the monthly connection, a community gathering. And hopefully already you can feel that connection with everybody. But let's begin by connecting our hearts right away with each other, creating this beautiful field of loving energy so that everyone feels it and is uplifted by it and even healed by it. Let's imagine ourselves in a shaft of white light, anchoring ourselves in that light from as high above as you can imagine and going down into the center of the earth, grounding you to allow that natural life force to flow more freely through you. Drop your awareness from the head down into the heart. Just feel yourself resting there. This is where your inner light always is present, but you turn it up. So turn it up now so that you shine well beyond the confines of the body. And now just send your rays out around the world, connecting everyone here. Even if you're not listening live, you are part of this group, this collective energy with the intention of joining this gathering. So I ask my guides to step in nice and closely today so that I can get higher guidance from you as we go through this evening. I'm asking that everyone here receive healing in some form, emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, and that each person present feel the love, feel their connectedness with each other and hear exactly what they need to hear this evening. Let's just all send a big ray of gratitude to those in spirit who are here with us this evening and nudged you to be present. And so it is. All righty. Well, we're just going to go straight through for 2 hours. You can get up and take breaks. I won't. We're just going to keep on going. And we will pause every so often, and I will take questions from the questions you type in the Q&A box, as Bev was saying at the beginning there. Not the chat box, but the Q&A box, and she'll scan them and will be guided intuitively to choose just the right question, those that will apply to the most people and have not already been answered in the FAQ page on my website. I want to make an announcement. I was very happy to hear that just yesterday, my book, Still Right Here, that's been in paper copy for several years now, just came out in audiobook form yesterday on Audible through Amazon or Apple or Audible apps. And I just downloaded my own copy and started listening to it. It had time me laughing in the car as we were heading somewhere earlier and we were playing the very first chapter. But it was my joy and my honor to narrate it in a recording studio and relive the stories that are in that book. It's a beautiful, beautiful story of 4 couples who spent a week together. They all have a child across the veil, and Ty and I are one of those couples. And it shows how our children went with us on that sailing adventure and the love that was present through that shared bond, the messages our kids gave us, and the messages for all of us that those who have passed truly are still right here. I was struck in just the preface to the book, how powerful the messages are. So it's just a really great read or listen for anybody who wants that confirmation that love never dies, that life is eternal, and that you can get evidence to that point when you ask for it. I'll be giving a lot of tips and tools this evening, how we can all connect with our own loved ones more clearly. And one of the best ways to do that is by raising our own consciousness. So every time we have these gatherings every month, there are lots of tools and the teaching comes from straight across the veil. Many times I'm the test case. And so whatever I learn the hard way, I'll pass it along to you as soon as possible so that hopefully you don't have to go through the same trials. But that's what life is all about, isn't it? The ups and downs and learning and growing from the hard parts as well as enjoying the easy parts. So the way these evenings go hasn't changed at all. I'm going to start off with some of the beautiful evidence and moments of connection during my readings since we last met, and then the sharing of insights, guidance, tools from my guides. The reason we always start with the evidence is to help us make that shift from thinking we're only human. When you don't make that shift daily, like I do, connecting across the veil, it's too easy to think there's nothing more than this life. So I love to share the evidential stories one after another. So something inside you goes, oh my God, this really is real. I am a soul in a human role right now. And what I just said a minute ago there about connecting every day like I do, my goal is that all of you joining us here this evening make that a habit. And we're going to talk about that, how you just make it part of every hour of your day, moment by moment, if you can, somehow connecting with your guides, with God itself, with your loved ones who have passed, just knowing you are not a soul operator here, S-O-L-E. You are a soul operating in a human body. So let's start with a reading I did probably about 3 weeks ago now. I know I shared this story on my Shift Network class that just ended because it happened the day before I led the class, and I was just so eager to share it, I couldn't wait. So some of you may have heard this if you were in that class. But I sat down to do my reading right here in this chair. And every time before I do a reading, many of you know, my guide, Brenda Baker, who was my friend in physical form and is my friend now without a body, is always right here in my awareness. I don't see her, but I hear her, and she puts images in my mind, and she always talks to me right before a reading. And I have my little clipboard. It's over here beside me. And I'll just write down what she tells me. I write down what the spirits say. And in this particular case, she said, expect the unexpected. And I thought, ooh, that sounds kind of exciting. So in fact, just in the last module I taught in my most recent mediumship course, we talked about expectations. And for anybody that connects across the veil with spirit, it's a really great practice to get into, to sit and think beforehand, what assumptions am I making going into this? What might I be expecting to happen? But we just don't know because we humans are the wild cards and spirit just throws some wrenches at us. So to go into any session across the veil with no preconceived ideas is optimal. But here's Brenda saying right up front, something unexpected is going to happen. So this was a Zoom reading. I'm looking at my screen just like I'm looking at you now. And here comes a couple on the screen. Lynette sets up all my readings. I don't know anything about the people I'm going to do a session for. I don't even know if I knew in this case that there were going to be 2 people. But right away, what do you think the normal assumption is when you see a husband and wife come to a reading? For me, especially since I support the group Helping Parents Heal so much, it's my should I say my favorite organization? It's the one I give the most attention to, let's put it that way. I immediately thought, ooh, they probably have a child across the veil, but Brenda's saying expect the unexpected. So how do you know if they have a child across the veil? As soon as I tuned in, I'm sensing in my system, is there a spirit standing over here? Just to my left is where children and spirit always allow me to feel them. And I felt no one. I don't see the spirits. So I have to rely on feeling and personality and knowing. There was nothing there. So I tune in and I get a father and a mother, and then another father, and then another mother, and then a foster father. So this couple wanted to hear from loved ones together. They didn't have a child across the veil. I was very grateful for them for that, but didn't expect 5 parents. And then I can't remember if we got grandparents. Yes, we did. Grandparents and 2 brothers. So this was the biggest crowd, I think, that I've juggled in one reading, and trying to tell everybody apart got a little bit challenging, but I'll bring this up again later. A great technique when, for example, we had 2 brothers and they're both allowing me to feel them right here to my right, 2 brothers. I say to them, step apart so I can feel your personalities distinctly. And once I did that, it was very clear. One of them was very reserved. The other one was a great big jokester. And the man, my client, the husband, very much confirmed that one was very reserved and the other one was a jokester. And the one who was the jokester said clear as day to me, life's too short to take it seriously. I reported that word for word. The couple looked at each other on screen and they said, that is exactly what's written on his tombstone. And a t-shirt. The t-shirt's great, but the tombstone, well, the wife said it. She looked at her husband and she said, that is a gold nugget. Now, I could tell she'd been a student of mine, because that's what I call one of those wows that you couldn't possibly know, that really lets your client, your sitter know, oh my God, this is my loved one. This is her husband's brother. So I just celebrated that one. I'm still celebrating it to get exactly the words that are on the tombstone. He did a great job getting that through word for word. So I really hope any of you who are practicing mediumship or connecting with your own loved ones get those kind of gold nuggets that let us know this is real. So later on, that comes my client's, the man's father, and he's talking to me, and all of a sudden I went, ow, he's showing me he's showing me a spade coming down the back of my head. It looks like a spade, and I literally feel it back here. And the wife looks at her husband and she said, when he was a kid, her husband, who's here now, his brother hit him in the head with an axe, right where I went, ow. So dad was retelling that story. The brother's right here, but oh no, Brenda just told me, no, it wasn't him who did it. It was another one of their brothers. They had more brothers who hadn't passed yet. So dad was just reliving a memory of his kids. And that is certainly a memorable one, isn't it? Hitting the back of the head with an axe. Oh my goodness. But to me, it was just so amazing to feel it and see in my mind's eye what it was. This is another really great example of saying everything you sense and see and hear, even if you think it's crazy, because often those turn out to be, again, the gold nuggets. So expect the unexpected indeed. We got it. All righty, let's see. I did mention in the emails that went out announcing this evening that one of the topics we would cover would be a healing message from a newly departed spirit, with healing for everyone who is grieving. Now, I like to keep these evenings light because it's a celebration that those in spirit are here, that we can all learn to connect with them, all of us, because we're all souls. So I don't mean any disrespect to any of you who are deeply grieving. And this next story, though, will show you why we celebrate, because those in spirit know exactly what we need to hear in readings, and at any time they're trying to get them through, even if you're not with the medium. So I had a last minute opening come up the very next day, I believe, and I called Lynette and I said, do you have anybody you could put in that spot? And she used her intuition, which she does in moments like that. And she said, do you think you could do a reading for someone whose loved one has only been gone for 2 months? I very rarely do a reading for anyone who's been gone any less than 3 months, because I want to make sure the person across the veil has learned the ropes and learned how to communicate without a physical voice. And I want to make sure the person here is not burdened by the fog of grief and will be able to hear what's being said. It won't suffer from what we call psychic amnesia, where you pass along things and you're just so foggy you don't remember them. That's great when they remember it later, but it really fuels the reading when you do remember in the moment. So I've been overcoming a cold for the last 2 weeks, just about gone now. And I had to check in before every reading to see, am I okay to do this reading? And I was super nasally and still coughing, but I got the thumbs up from Spirit. Go ahead and give this reading a go. So my client came on the screen and my heart just sank. He was all bundled up in blankets, like he was pampering himself. And he was in deep grief. He said, I have to tell you about my partner. And before I could stop him, he started telling me how he died and what exactly the circumstances were, and the tears are flowing down his face. And I stopped him and I said, please, this is his job to tell me this to prove that he's really here with you. So please don't tell me too much more. And that's always good advice. We don't want to know anything up front. That's the point of evidential mediumship. So he stopped. But why did my heart sink? Because each person in a reading is important. The medium, the client, and those in spirit. The higher the vibration, the easier it is to connect, the more clear the connection. So seeing this man in deep grief, crying from minute one, did not mean I wasn't going to be able to communicate, even though his partner had only been across the veil for 2 months. But what did it mean I had to do? Turn up the love, right? Raise the vibration. And here my energy, my physical energy was a little low to begin with. Well, happily, I didn't need to worry because I tuned in and I think they were married, so it's his husband, was just immediately present and talkative. And I'll tell you later that turns out he's Cuban, the man in spirit. And his husband here said, I was never worried. Have you ever met a Cuban who couldn't talk and communicate well? And his partner, I didn't know he was Cuban to start with, and I didn't know that that was a tendency, but clearly in this case, it worked to everyone's benefit. My client, his energy lifted somewhat during the reading, but he was just so down to begin with. You could see, though, that as his husband shared things from across the veil, he started to enliven just a bit. But it wasn't my job to do that for him. It was his partner across the veil to show that he's still here. And he did a beautiful job. He showed me one beautiful thing was, I said, he's showing me you have a very special ring of his, but there's also a special chain you have. And my client reached under his shirt, pulled out a chain, and he had 2 wedding rings on the chain. And I said, but you also have 2 together on your hand. And he holds up his hand and he had 2 separate wedding rings on his hand. And he said that it was something really strange that his husband had done. He wanted to get him a really special ring because they didn't at first. And he said, don't spend your money on that. And he got it anyway. And I said, well, right now he's saying that the rings around your neck, the plain ones, are your rings in physical form, and the rings on your hand are your rings for all eternity. Well, I want to show you a picture that my client sent me afterwards. So I'm going to share the screen real quick here. Here's the fancy ring that was on his hand. And when I said that your husband says that's the ring for all eternity, look what's on the gravestone that had just arrived. You can see it's just being taken out of the packing material. So once again, we have one of these beautiful moments. I mean, twice in 1 month, where someone across the veil shows what's on the marker. And I hope that gives all of you just this beautiful awareness that we may have crossed the veil when we died, but we still are very much aware of what's going on back with our families in a human body. And we love to see how we're honored from across the veil. So it was just lovely. Let's see. Oh, when it came time for his partner across the veil to show the signs that he's leaving. And when I say when it came time, there were certain things I asked the spirits for in every reading. How did you pass? Give me a current event, and what kind of signs are you leaving? Those kind of things come up every reading. I had the fleeting moment of seeing a garage door going up and down by itself. And I flashed back to the only other time I've ever seen that from spirit and the woman that it pertained to. But my human side kicked in, and I couldn't believe that a spirit could actually pull that off, make a garage door go up and down. I'm kicking myself, right? But I said, well, he's showing me he's going to make something electrical happen. And I hedged a bit, and that's all I said. So remember that came up. But the next day, I got an email from Johnny, my client, and boy, he was changed. I want to read you what he said. He said, I have so much to celebrate with this reading. The whole thing was dead on. You described him exactly like he was. He says, the fact that my partner said I put up with a lot of his, his partner said that he, the one across the veil, put up with a lot of my clients' neurotic behavior was actually funny. Oh my God, it's so true. Now, I want to expand on that a little, because one of my main teachings, in fact, rule number one that I teach any medium is do no harm. So some of you may be thinking, you told your client he's neurotic? It's all in how you share things. His Cuban husband, who was going on and on and on, was very much showing me that my client had his picky, almost OCD behaviors, and they were endearing, and they both knew about it. So I knew that this was not going to be an insult. And I even laughed when I said it. He's saying, you have some neurotic behaviors, and he put up with them willingly. So you can see how that for him was actually, oh, they're my first goosebumps of the evening. Just a beautiful spirit validation. We all have our things, right? And to have someone who is allegedly dead and gone come back to validate that is quite beautiful. And then he said, here's the message for all of us that I said that we would get to. Now, let me just preface this by reminding all of you that in a reading, an evidential medium will go for a beautiful balance of evidence that it's really them, those gold nuggets that could be no one else, and capturing the essence and the personality, and balancing that with their messages. What do they want to say now that they can get through to you? What is their main message that they know you most need to hear? Now, it could be as simple as, I love you and I'm still okay. The thing is with these messages, sometimes they sound very generic, but as a medium, we have to trust that, again, the spirit knows exactly the main point. And in this case, boy, did he ever. Johnny said, my husband touched on the core pain that I had been feeling until then, and I had not realized what it was. In my mind, grieving a lost spouse is evidence that you truly love your spouse. And his partner came through and said, will you stop crying all the time? You don't have to do that to prove to me how much you loved me. I know how much you love me, even if you didn't grieve a day. You should have seen that man's face when I delivered that message. His eyes went wide and he said, you've just hit it. I never realized that. So he said, I do not know where the heck that idea came from. So when he told me that there's no need to be as desperate as I was, because he knew I always loved him, the same exact way he always loved me, I found the answer. In other words, the answer to his healing, the key. It was everything I needed to hear. There's the goosebumps again. And when you know your loved one is still with you, when they show you through this evidence, it just changes everything. He says, there are so many layers to this reading. I will always have them here with me. So again, that message, I've heard it before, often from children across the veil to their parents. I believe it's even in the book still right here that we talked about at the beginning. And yet there are so many important messages that those across the veil can give. So when we trust them to give exactly that one, it's perfect. And yet, doesn't it apply to all of us? So I hope that it really struck a chord with some of you who really needed to hear that. Can you hear that? I can hear your loved ones across the veil going, yay. Maybe they'll take it to heart now. Doesn't mean you stop grieving, but just don't equate it with the amount of love you had for them. If that were true, we'd never get out of our grief, would we? Right? Because we love everyone so much. All right. Beautiful. And I thank Johnny and Albert for allowing me to share that story with you. And then the beautiful thing is he said he went out to walk his partner's dog right after the reading and physically felt his partner's presence for the first time after just 2 months, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. All right. He said, because of this, I am starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then the next day, another email from him. He slept well for the first time since his partner passed. And I have to tell you, that is a very, very common after effect of a good evidential mediumship reading. I believe so many of us lose sleep wondering, is my loved one okay? Are they still around? And when you find out they are, we sleep well. It's beautiful. Oh, so now for the kicker. In that reading, his husband told him, you've got to get rid of all my stuff. I said, he's showing me that he bought so much stuff. A lot of things still had the price tag on them. He's showing me boxes everywhere. And he says, give it away, give it to charity, throw it away, just get rid of it. Well, about 3-4 days later, the client sent me photos of his garage, shelves stacked high, boxes everywhere. And he had hired someone and bought a dumpster and was throwing stuff out and sorting it out to give it away. He had promised his partner he would be able to finally put his Jeep in the garage. It had not been able to fit before. So he wrote to me and he said, Suzanne, I got the Jeep in the garage, but I was so not used to having the Jeep in the garage that when I went to back it out this morning, I lightly bumped the garage door. Now he said the door was completely jammed. I couldn't pull it up or down. Here's the kicker. He said what do you call it? Garage door opener. The electric garage door opener had not worked for years. They'd always manually open and close that garage door. But when he bumped it with his husband's Jeep and it jammed, he suddenly, where do you think this came from, had the insight, maybe I'll just try that button, even though it hasn't worked in years. He pushed the button, and you know the end of this story. The garage door worked. Oh, yeah. It's going to be a night of goosebumps. Oh, my God. So you can imagine now I'm kicking myself for not saying it. And we get those lessons every once in a while. And I'll be good for another few months now. And we'll say everything. But it happens to all of us, the best of us, right? You just don't say what you meant to say. But trust the spirit. They can pull off some miracles. And that's a good one. For those of you who missed my radio show last Thursday, speaking of miracles, we did a beautiful show about pets in the afterlife, miracle pet stories, brought in about 6 or 7 people to share their stories, including my husband, Ty, who shared a beautiful Rudy story or 2. And it's now on my YouTube channel and in the archives if you'd like to actually watch the show. But speaking of pets, dear Brenda, when she passed, left her beloved puppy dog, Teddy, who is actually a female dog, with her son and daughter-in-law. And Teddy crossed the Rainbow Bridge yesterday. So Teddy is now with Brenda. But Lynette and I were talking on the phone yesterday, and I said, oh, Brenda just held out her arms as if she's welcoming Teddy. And Lynette found out that right around that time is right when her dog crossed to join her. And I may have the days wrong. was it just this morning or yesterday? I'm not quite sure. But Brenda came through in my meditation and said that she received Teddy well and that Teddy really enjoyed the treats. And I knew she meant that Teddy was eating treats right up to her last breath. I was sure of it. I texted this to Lynette. She sent back a screenshot from Brenda's son saying that Teddy had crossed the veil and enjoyed dog treats right up to the very last breath. So I hope that gives all of you a nice warm fuzzy awareness that our pets are also well received and well taken care of when they cross. Okay, let's see. Good. Why don't we do a couple questions, Bev? I have a couple more evidential stories, but I've been already talking for half an hour, so let's do that.
Okay, we've got a long list here. Irene asked about, she has the condition called aphantasia, the inability to intentionally visualize imagery in her mind's eye, and asked, for those of us with this condition, how do we move past it in order to cultivate my ability as a medium? If someone asks me to visualize something, I only see a black screen.
It's a good question, but it's no different than somebody who's blind and they make up for it with their other senses. Like I've said so many times, I don't see the spirits. To me, I feel like that's a real handicap, but it has caused me to pick up on the most subtle awarenesses. We've often spoken of it like a butterfly's wing just brushing across your face. One happened in a reading yesterday. I'll be sharing it next month. And it's because I don't see them that I know I was able to tune in so clearly to something that was super subtle. So don't allow yourself to believe that because you can't visualize things, that that's going to be an impediment. What if you then get amazing clairaudience and stunning claircognizance? You just have no idea how far you can go. But if you talk yourself out of it because you or somebody else convinced you that because you can't visualize, this won't work, you may be cheating yourself. So just don't even consider it an issue and allow spirit to communicate with you. They will, in exactly the right way, they will know what is the best way to communicate perfectly with you.
Great, thank you. Deb has a question about miscarriage. Why would a soul decide to enter a woman's body for such a short time and then leave before entering the world? What lessons are to be learned from this?
Oh my goodness. Let me just tune in here a moment. Certainly compassion, understanding. I'm hearing right now that it's not always deliberate on the soul's part, that sometimes things just go wrong in the physical body, which are really like machines at times. And the soul says, this is not going to be viable for me. And this is not going to allow me to learn the lessons that I came here for. And in those cases, I see them give this symbol, I'll be back, or I coming back around, that sort of thing. And any challenge we have is always an opportunity for us to rise above our human challenges and realize we're not only human. So this life is so filled with ups and downs and challenges. It's really just a natural part of living here. You could choose any great challenge and say, what's the point of this? It's not so much what's the point, it's what do we do with it? Okay. How about one more, Bev?
Okay, Jody asked, why do guides choose to send us nudges to look in a book or visit a place? Why don't they just tell us directly what we need to know?
Because it's so much fun when we learn to listen and tune in and get the surprises. So stay tuned because I have several of those for you this evening. I was laughing as Bev's reading it because it feels like a setup. All right. You know, if they just spoke in our ear as clearly as a phone call, there's no effort that goes into raising our own consciousness. We take it for granted, right? Hey, Why should I go study anything when I can go, I'm not going to say, hey, Siri, because she's going to talk back to me right now. But, you know, if you can just ask your phone to give you all the answers, where's the fun? Where's the challenge? Where's the learning? So if your spirit guides can just talk that clearly in your ear, we would not be having these joyful reunions right here, right? It's celebrating how they communicate with us. It's all part of the two worlds coming together. All right. Oh, I have to share the screen again. I sit down to do a reading last week. Brenda knows I'm going to ask her, show me something going on with Lynette right now to show that I'm tuned in. I'll pick up on whatever you tell me. And Brenda showed me an embroidered pillow. Now, I have not been to Lynette's house and seen any embroidered pillow, but it was so clear. This is a current event. Something's going on with Lynette. So I texted her. I could even see it, like little pastel blue and green, just a beautiful ornate pillow. And Lynette texted back this photo. Look at this. I was so surprised. This is exactly what Brenda put in my mind's eye. You can even see the corner of Lynette's eye there in her red glasses. She just immediately held up the phone, took a selfie, wrote back to me and said, spy, meaning Brenda, spying on her again, knowing exactly what she's doing. But the funny thing is, Lynette told me that she had been about to get up off the bed or the couch, wherever she was, and something made her say, I think I'll just snuggle back into this pillow right now. And she leaned back and pressed her head into this pillow. She was aware it was an unusual thing to do. Can you see Brenda putting in Lynette's head the thought to do that, pushing her backwards like that? I just love it. And it just made for a perfect now. This is what Lynette's doing. Go for it, Suzanne. You're ready to work. That's why we play the game. It just shows that I'm tuned in. Even if I had a cold, I'm ready to work. So I hope that all of you will learn to play the sign game. All right. Let's see. Oh, well, that was a good time to be tuned in too, because I really was nasally and low energy. But Brenda said, you're good to go. And on the screen comes my client. She was very serious. So this wasn't grief. She just right up front said, well, I said, what is your intention today? I didn't need to hear who she wanted to hear from. What is your intention? A shared intention is always important in a reading. And she said, I am a physician and I'm looking for proof, as much as you can give it, that there is more to this world than what we perceive with our senses. And I said, oh boy, well, here we go. Because that's what an evidential medium does, right? Shows the continuity of consciousness. But when you have a very left brain person, and she was self-admittedly very left brain, she even told me that right up front. How do you handle that as a human being? You realize the human side of you can't connect, can't get that proof. It's the soul, the higher self that's within all of us that does the connecting, that is always connected to all there is. And we just come to trust that. We recognize the human side that says, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this? And the soul says, take a break. You don't do this, I do. So I got those doubts out of the way. And let me tell you, her father came through. I can't remember who else, but I remember like probably her mother. We went back and forth and there were like 4 or 5 pieces of evidence. And I looked at her and I said, I can relax now because you sure got your proof. And she's just nodding her head. It was beautiful. So I acknowledged that there was a little bit of tension on my part because I want people to know this is real. Can't deny it. So she, her energy never did lift. It never, she didn't become all bubbly like I get when I get gold nuggets, but you could tell she was taking it all in. And I sure wish that I could have been at her dinner table that night discussing that. All right. But again, teaching point for all of you, whether you're working as a medium or connecting with your own loved ones and guides, notice how each time before a reading, I check in with my own physical body and with my guides, am I okay to work? Because if the energy goes too low, it just doesn't work. And I'll have a story about that next month. We just had too much to share it this month, but I did have to call one off because of that cold. All right, let's see. And the teaching from the guides was the next day after I called that one off, connections across the veil require energy, literally physical energy that the body uses. And I said, before this reading I had to call off, I checked in with Brenda and I got a current event for Lynette. And the guide said, you were able to do that because your connection with Brenda is so normal to you now, it doesn't require extra energy. But to connect with someone else's loved ones who you don't know does require a greater exchange of what the body knows as physical energy. And I was depleted and didn't have enough to make that connection. So if you have an ongoing relationship with your own loved ones, don't think that being under the weather is going to negate your ability to connect. Let's see. Speaking of energy, our beautiful Lynette gave me a wonderful example of when we're in human mode, a great analogy of how to visualize shifting to soul mode. She said, it's like rolling down the windows and opening the sunroof in the car. Your physical body is the vehicle, right? So there's nothing we can literally do to roll down the windows and open the sunroof. But if you can use that analogy and just picture that you are just letting in more light, that intention does the trick. And in fact, I was shown by my guides one morning after having that discussion with Lynette that it's like the recirc button in a car. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll pull it up here because I took a picture of it. Some of you may be familiar with this one. That little arrow on your car means you're just circulating the same energy round and round in the car. So what we want to do is when we notice that we're stuck in human mode with those thoughts like, oh, my medication's going to get in the way of my connecting, or same old thoughts that bring us down, you want the button that lets in the fresh air. And it's really funny because every once in a while, let me get out of screen share, somehow I'll hit the button in the car. And my husband Ty invariably says, no wonder it's getting stuffy in here. You push that button again, and he reaches down and he turns it off. He hadn't done that in at least a year. And the very morning my guides gave me the teaching about bringing in fresh insights like the recirc button, Ty and I went somewhere to run an errand in the car. Darned if he didn't look down, and he said, you did it again. You'd press that recirc button. And he leaned over and pressed it. I just looked at him and I said, that was a setup from spirit. He had no idea what I was talking about, but I just loved that web. So the web of connections. So if your own thoughts keep going round and round and round, it's getting a little stuffy in here in your mind, right? So simply with the intention of bringing in fresh insights, that takes awareness, you will begin to get fresh new ideas about things. That's just the way the world works. So speaking of the web of connections in action, the web that morning with the recirc button was absolutely crazy. Minutes before we got in the car, if I remember this correctly, I was going through email and I got one from a new friend, and she said, hey, I just watched your interview with Rick Archer on Buddha at the gas pump. I go to open my emails right after pressing the recirc button for Ty, and there's an email from Rick Archer from Buddha at the gas pump for me. Crazy, crazy, crazy. All right. Let's see. Speaking of the web in action, we are going to bring on our beloved Bev Garlip, my assistant and the monthly connection guru and all around does everything person. She has a wonderful story to share with you about the web in action, and I asked her to come on and share the magic this evening. So Bev, you got the floor.
Okay, this is fun to share. I shared this with Suzanne actually after I had just come home from a committee meeting. I volunteer at a little local school near us and help with some of the academic things, and we coordinate scholarships. So I was sitting around a table with 8 or 10 people on the scholarship committee, and my ears perked up when one of the men said, "We have a new scholarship to coordinate. It's from a man named John, and he's doing this in memory of his wife who passed away this year, and her name is Michelle." Well, Suzanne has a dear friend, and I also knew her, Michelle, and her husband's name is John, and Michelle passed this last year. So I paid attention at this, and sure enough, it was our Michelle. And sitting right next to me is was the head of the scholarship committee, and his wife passed this year. And Ed leaned over to me and said, "Bev, this is really strange, but I didn't know John, total stranger to me, until he called asking me if we would coordinate this new scholarship in Michelle's memory." And as we compared notes and talked about it, we discovered that Michelle and my wife died on the very same day in the very same hospice. And our hospice here in the Villages is not huge. It's maybe 12 rooms with a central lobby. So I know these men in their darkest hours had crossed paths many times in this lobby. And it just made my heart smile to think of the two wives' souls saying something like, "I know what my husband's going to do when I pass. He wants to do something in my honor." And the other one saying, "Oh, my husband heads up the scholarship committee." And can you just see these seeds being planted, and the wives rejoicing that, planting these seeds. And little did these husbands know that months later, this phone call had been all coordinated, the web at work, and they really weren't strangers. And I just thought it was just a beautiful story of all of that in action.
It is a beautiful story. And until you start hearing many of these stories and talking to the souls themselves across the veil, showing us how it works, we could just mark it off as coincidence, but we know it's not. It's what we call a setup in spirit. And I love Michelle, and I know that she's working hard. They're raising money now for the school through music. Beautiful. Thank you, Bev. One more web story. I wanted to, and it has a lesson for all of us. That's why I always hope to share these stories. I wanted to send an email to someone, but I didn't have their email address. But I had in mind a former acquaintance who I hadn't heard from in years and could not for the life of me remember his name to ask him for this email address I needed. All I knew was his name, we'll call him, was John. So here's what you do when you can't remember a name. Don't scrunch up your face and say, "What was his name? What was his name?" That's trying, that's thinking, that's human side. Relax, take a deep breath, and send it through your higher self to the universe. What's John's last name? And now you leave it. And because you're not trying, you've created space and it will drop right in. So at lunchtime, I still hadn't heard. And I said to Ty, "Okay, we're working on John's last name. Do you remember John? That guy, John?" And Ty said, "I don't." And I said, "Well, that's okay. I've been thinking of him so much today. I'll probably hear from him anyway." Well, about 10 minutes later, all of a sudden, the last name popped right into my head. Oh, of course. How could I not have remembered that? 5 minutes later, I got an email from him. Boom. But the crazy thing is, he didn't reach out just because he happened to think of me, which would have been evidence that he picked up on me thinking about him. No, he had been writing a book all week, and it included a chapter about a reading I did for him. So we were already crossing each other's minds at a deeper level all week, I was reaching out to him because I needed him for something else. So can you see the crazy web of connections? The important point here is you are part of that web, and it has nothing to do with your physicality. So when you need to know something, just shift into soul awareness, and what you need is right here as part of the web. Cool stuff. How about a couple of questions, Bev?
Okay. This is an anonymous asker, and I'm going to whittle it down a bit. The basic question is it possible to die too soon before an exit point due to a medical error or an accident?
The guides say too soon is a, ooh, they're going to twitch my lip like crazy here, is a human concept that all is always perfect, that things do not have to go completely according to plan for there to be learning, growth, and evolution. And that all souls know that in interacting with human aspects who have free will, that's the wild card, that things can change. And it doesn't matter if the soul is here or across the veil, learning, growth, evolution will continue. So they basically just said, please don't worry about it.
Thank you. Okay, this is anonymous. It's been asked before, but I know it's on everyone's mind. Can our loved ones on the other side see us every moment in the shower? And they say, yikes.
Yes, they can. Number one, they don't care anymore. Once you get to the soul level and you realize that these bodies are costumes, we get over our hang-ups. That's a totally human thing. But number two, they give us our privacy. They respect our privacy. I think what runs through everybody's mind is worse than being in the shower would be making love with a partner. Okay, we don't want anybody watching us and that. So they just say it's just like a little shield that goes up. There's awareness of when to visit and when not to. So don't worry.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sure that helped a lot of our watchers tonight.
Oh, wait, I had to add one more thing, though. I have heard from quite a few people who actually connect better with their loved ones in the shower. There's something about literally being in a shower of water. The water movement itself helps them connect better. I've talked to one medium who looked down and saw this pair of hairy legs in the shower with her. It was not a relative. It was some famous person that she then recognized. And it was one of those, oh, that's interesting that you're visiting me now. You must have a pretty important message. I think that would take a lot of training not to be freaked out by that. Okay, one more, Bev.
One more. Pablo asks, how should we integrate our ego in our daily life? We often talk about ego in a negative way, but how do we best use it?
It's recognizing that it's part of your operating system, it's part of your story, and that it has high frequency vibrations and low frequency vibration. And that awareness allows you to say, okay, these lower vibrations are not serving me, so we'll set them aside and we'll focus more on soul qualities, which we're going to be talking about very shortly. So just awareness and not berating yourself for being human, but noticing it and upgrading the frequencies as often as possible. Great.
Thank you.
Oh, I just had the biggest surge of love for all of you. And it's not, I'm not saying that just because we're going to be talking about love later, but it's just, this is exactly what tonight is all about. This once a month connection. Love is that connection that just spontaneously bursts forth from your heart sometimes and has to be expressed. So let me see. Oh, so I talked earlier about how Brenda and I played the sign game before a reading. Brenda, tell me something Lynette's doing right now. And she does, and Lynette validates it. Well, guess what? Somebody played that in reverse. There is a group of humans practicing mediumship who meet regularly in a circle to build the power and do readings for each other. And I'll just give the first name, one of the members of this group named Cindy Lynette texted me, said in the group that Brenda spoke up to her. She said, Cindy said, Brenda is here in the circle and she's asking, what's with all the sparkles, Suzanne? So this group never interacts with me as a group. I didn't even know they meet, but Lynette reached out to me and said, Brenda just came through to a group through Cindy and wants to know what's up with all the sparkles. I believe I held my phone out, took a selfie, and texted it to Lynette, just like she texted me the pillow. I was wearing a sweater that Ty gave me for Christmas, and it is solid sequins all down the front. I said, you tell Cindy, way to go. That was beautiful. But she was shocked because she had not intended to play the sign game with Brenda. Brenda just now said, always on duty. She's here to help anybody with mediumship. She's already shown she can be in more than one place at one time. She says it's true. All of your loved ones can. And so she's just stretching herself a little thin, I think. As long as you're here when I need you. That was pretty cool. So good work, Cindy. So all of these connections, what makes it possible? It's that wonderful spiritual term, oneness. Oneness is because all of us arise from one sea of consciousness, one field of awareness. And I just was aware last night of the most beautiful point that's so important for us to remember. We may all be members of one field, but that doesn't mean we have to all be the same. Oneness does not mean sameness. So when we look around at others, when you get on the spiritual path, you might get a little bit upset and say, why isn't everybody doing this or that? When in fact, we know that that's another spiritual truth, that each of us is a unique expression of the one source. So remember, oneness is one level. The differences arise at this human level, and that's okay. Our goal is that those differences reflect, hopefully, those high frequency vibrations of love and compassion and kindness. All right. So let me see. The question was asked about following the guidance moment by moment, integrating your ego awareness as a soul. I had one day that was off the charts, stunning the way the guidance came. The question was asked, why don't our guides speak to us clearly like a phone call? Well, this is the example I alluded to earlier. If they spoke clearly all the time, I would not have had nearly the fun I did this one day this past month. And it started the moment I woke up. I hadn't even gotten out of bed, and I heard clear as day, like a phone call, Ilya Prigogine. I recognized the name of a Russian author or scientist. See, I don't even know who that person was. I think it's a man, but I had heard the name here or there, but not in a long time. Probably read it somewhere a while back, but I wrote it down because it was so clear. It came with no other guidance because the guides are not speaking like a phone call. They're just giving me a name out of the blue. So this is a clue for all of you. If you hear a word or see a visual and there's no reason for it, you don't know what the image is about, you've never heard the word before, or why would it come up? That's not your thoughts. That's not the recirculating air in your vehicle. That's something fresh coming through the sunroof, guys. So write it down as I did. I always have that pad of paper right by the bed. Now, I went to meditate and I asked the guides, what's up with Ilya Prigogine? Now I'm in a meditative state and I heard clear as day, do not go down that rabbit hole. What they meant was, don't spend half the day Googling Ilya Prigogine. You don't need to. It's not the reason you were given that name. So you learn to communicate with your guides in just one little sentence like that, and you know what they mean. This comes with practice, and it comes with setting the intention that you will know and that it will be very clear to you. So I went for my daily walk that day, and Ty was not with me. So I said, oh, I'll just listen to something on my earpods. And I decided to listen to a YouTube video. Well, I tuned in and I said, what should I listen to? They guided me to listen to a video by an author named Ervin Laszlo. He has written about 100 books on consciousness. I don't think I have ever watched a video by Ervin Laszlo, but I asked, what should I watch? That's another way you can communicate with your guides. You have some free time. What should I read now? What should I watch on TV? What YouTube search terms should I use? This is the way we integrate our soul awareness with our human side moment by moment throughout the day. And I clearly was guided to watch Ervin Laszlo. Well, I knew immediately when he said a few words that I had listened well, because he used the words in his video that something was beyond your ken, K-E-N. That's a word that means beyond your knowing. It's archaic language. Ervin Laszlo is not a native English speaker. He used that unusual term, and I started laughing because that exact phrase, beyond your ken, was given to me in the Daily Way message several hours earlier that very morning, right after I asked about Ilya Prigogine. Now, there's no connection with them, but I was tuned in meditation. In fact, you could go to the Daily Way right now and search for Beyond Your Ken, and we'd know exactly what day this happened because it was right there. And when I heard it in meditation, I thought, oh, that's strange wording. And there it was in a video I was guided to. So what I'm trying to do here is model for you how moment by moment, ask your guides, what's the best thing for me to do now? And they'll give you these cool validations. They didn't say it to me that second time. It came up in what I was listening to, and that's the validation. So I spent the rest of the evening putting together a YouTube video about Christ consciousness, unity consciousness, and I was using excerpts from some talks I had given. When I finished the video, sat down after dinner to do some reading, and I have about 6 books on the coffee table in the living room, every one of them partially read. How do you think I approached that? Hey guides, which one of these is the best one for me to read this evening? So I dove into one, and it was an Ervin Laszlo book, and it was edited chapters from various well-known writers about consciousness. I turned to a chapter by Barbara Marx Hubbard. Some of you may know her. I believe she's passed now. And she was talking all about Christ consciousness and used over and over many of the terms that I had just put in my own YouTube video. I remember thinking, this day is crazy, all these synchronicities. And then just before I'm ready to close the book and go to bed, are you ready for this? Barbara Marx Hubbard referenced, you know who? Ilya Prigogine. Oh my God. The day started out with that name being put in my mind, and because my ongoing intention, which I hope will be yours from this day forward, is to be guided moment by spirit who has the bigger picture. It led me to one miracle moment after another and closed the chapter that day with that bit of magic. And they just said, you will never be at a loss for teaching in these monthly connections if we're willing to listen, right? Just got to remember to write it down. All right. How about a few questions? Then we'll get on to some other things I promised I would talk about tonight.
Okay. Here's one from Sherry. In cases where someone is kept alive on a ventilator for 2 years and they never regain consciousness, does the soul stay in the body that whole time?
Yes. The guides are saying the soul is what enlivens the body. The soul needs the body for certain lessons that continue to happen even in those circumstances, and to provide lessons to the family members gathered round. Okay, so it's never, none of us is completely acting in isolation. There's always learning and growth for everyone connected to all of us, and that's what these webs of connections are showing this evening. And just know that for the soul, 2 years is, there's no time for the soul. Okay.
Thank you. Shelley asks, do our guides accompany us for more than one life? Do we know them from other lives we've had?
The guides just said generally only one lifetime. Okay. Yeah. The main spirit guide will be with you from first breath to last, and then trying some different energy after that.
Okay. Thank you. And Terry asks about human lifetimes. Is it common that we would spend more than one lifetime with the same people?
Quite common, the guides say, but not in the same roles, different relationships. So I know for a fact from a beautiful piece of evidence where I asked my Susan, were you my mother in another lifetime? Because she had told me that. And I said, I need a validation. And I was in England at the time, and she flashed before my eyes this pink Fabergé egg, because she said that lifetime happened in Russia. She was my mother and I was her son. It's kind of hard for a former Navy commander to swallow that kind of thing. And why am I seeing a pink Fabergé egg? I'm in England. That night I went to Gatwick Airport. I was flying back home the next day. Here comes my Susan. She said, go out in the lobby, look around a little bit. Okay, I can follow orders. So I went out in the lobby. I'm walking past the gift shop. Look what was on the shelf. The exact pink Fabergé egg she had shown me in England. So thanks, Mom. In another lifetime, round and round we go. And she says it's really fun. Okay, let me continue on, and thank you for all these great questions. One of the topics that I said we would cover this evening is, if you're a medium, and I know that the rest of you who aren't would find this fascinating anyway, especially if you're on the receiving end of a reading, what happens if there's very little evidence to give? I'm trained in evidential mediumship, so there are just a whole list of things that a loved one across the veil can give us to show it's really them. How did they pass? What subjects did they like in school? What are favorite memories? The list goes on and on with things you would fill a biography with, right? So I began a reading sometime this past month, and I tuned in and sensed a son. My clients were a couple. Again, remember that have no expectations, but indeed I saw this couple and was drawn immediately over here and could feel a very vibrant, lively young boy. And he was talking to me in full sentences, but I was not getting any gold nuggets of evidence other than I got some very bad cramps in my stomach that pointed to how he passed. Directly physical symptoms of how he passed. So imagine how stunned I was when Dad said, well, you need to know our son was hypotonic and nonverbal. And I said, I need you to explain that word to me. He said he couldn't move and he never spoke. Hypotonic. That boy felt to me about 12 years old. He was actually close to 4 when he passed, never moved and never talked. And yet he came through in that reading, vibrant, smiling, and talking in full sentences. So I just taught a little bit about ethics the other day in mediumship, and we never stretch something to make it fit, to make ourselves look good. So I know what I'd sensed, and I didn't want to say just off the cuff, well, that's how he's coming through to me, but that was how he was coming through to me. So this is where I had to turn to Brenda and my other guides and say, what's going on here? Why is he coming through like this? And Brenda says, with no disrespect to the child, how did your dog Gretchen talk to you after she passed? And Gretchen, my dog, immediately was speaking to me in full sentences with English, vibrant, lively, jumping around. And it's what I've said all along, that the spirits really aren't speaking words. They could be speaking foreign language, and it's the thought transfer telepathically that once it gets to the brain, that energy is translated by the brain, a perfect instrument for this, into your own language in full sentences. And then Brenda reminded me, who's doing the connection and what are you connecting with? And I said, oh man, it's soul to soul communication. It's my soul is communicating with another soul. And Brenda says, and what do you know? And I said, the soul is always whole and complete. So I had to sit there and say, all right, we're not going to be able to get evidence to prove this is their son, but I can feel him. And why did he come through lively and vibrant? Well, let me ask him soul to soul. So I just said to the parents, this is a challenge for me. And I told them why, because of the way I was trained. But I said, I trust that he's here. We are going to have a conversation with his soul. And he came through lively and vibrant like a young boy, because that's how he was feeling as a soul. He said, I will always be their son in this role I chose to play. And he showed me the evidence that he had of the abdominal cramps and how he passed. And that was all the evidence that we could get. But from then on, the soul shared certain messages that we just had to trust. And he shared why he chose those parents, knowing he was going into a body that would not function along the normal spectrum. He shared about the love that he felt and the love that they gave him and the way that they treated him. In itself, that was evidential. But the whole point of all of this is when you can't get evidence, you can still get messages that are meaningful and enough evidence just to satisfy your own self. Because I went up to the couple later when I asked permission to share this with all of you this evening, and I asked them, what were you hoping to hear from your son? And they said, we've had quite a few mediumship readings, and all of them basically said the same things you did. The messages were the same. What else could they be? What else could the parents want other than what we all want? Validation that our loved one is fine, that they're still here, that they know how much we love them. And that was loud and clear. So that kind of connection does not happen that often where we don't have so much evidence, but please don't think that you have to have the evidence. I believe that 8 years ago or so, I would have just said, well, I can't do this reading. There's nothing more I can tell you. But I have so come to fully know that we are all souls and that the souls can communicate in full sentences, even if when we meet soul to soul across the veil, we won't need words. When you come to know that, you can carry on a conversation. So I hope you found that helpful. It was a really amazing learning experience for me. Okay. And the thing about age, why did he feel like 12 years old to me when he passed at 4? Even when he was here, he did not have the normal characteristics of a 4-year-old. Well, my Susan, when she crossed the veil, was 6 months pregnant. When I had my first reading with the medium to connect with her, her son showed up as a toddler, and he would have only been 1 year old and not even walking yet. But the medium described him as about 3 years old, hanging back shyly, sucking his thumb as if he wanted to get to know us. Well, it was all we needed to know that she had a son and he was with her. He chose to be that age to continue that role as the son with his mom, my stepdaughter, Susan. So this boy across the veil was enjoying his childhood across the veil as a young 10 or 12-year-old boy. Happy, active, vibrant, and still very much aware. That was another bit of evidence he gave. Things going on in their life now. He showed me some things that they had just done and were in the middle of doing certain projects. So it was beautiful. All righty. Let's see. Remember just a little while ago, I just suddenly felt that surge of love and I just had to share it. I just feel so much love for all of you. Do you ever feel that with somebody that you're with, maybe your partner or somebody in your family? They haven't done anything. They haven't said anything different. You're not even looking at each other. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, you just say, I love you. Where does that come from? That's the love within you. And they're the nearest target. That's just your innate sense of connection with all that is, and it has to be shared, and it bubbles up and you just focus right in on your loved one. But that love is part of your innate essence. Love is lack of separation. And at the soul level, we all know we are not separate. We all know we're rays of light from one light. And when it comes to the forefront in this life, we feel that connection. And sometimes we just have to say, I love you. So I want to share with you, I'm so proud of my sister. She recently started her own business. She's worked in assisted living facilities for almost 12 years, helping people move into residences, sign, take contracts and move in. But she went out on her own to help people find the right residences. And she is so intuitive. I realize now that it's part of our family makeup, but none of us knew it. She uses her intuition to help know exactly what people need. And she's doing really well in her business. But the reason I'm bringing this up is that she watched and attended last month's monthly connection webinar. And remember the guidance I gave, where anytime you have a challenge, just say, angels, help me with this. Angels, give me that. Angels, help them. Well, she had helped a woman find a home for the woman's father, assisted living home. And the man has dementia. And the woman called my sister the day he was due to move in, and she was totally knocked off balance. She said, Janice, my father is so agitated. He doesn't want to move in. He doesn't want to go. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm so upset. And my sister told her exactly how to handle it, asked her to calm down, hung up the phone. And Janice said, angels, I want you to surround my client with strength and courage. And angels, I want you to help that man find perfect calm. She told me that half an hour later, her client called her and said, Janice, I don't know what happened, but about 20 minutes ago, my father just completely calmed down and he's okay with everything and it's going perfectly. So it's just, once again, the power of prayer, right? Just don't be afraid to call on your angels. But speaking of angels, what's really cool is my sister told me that every single client, without exception, that she's had so far, she started in September, has said to her, you're an angel, you're an angel. And when they go to part for the last time, because her job with them is done, she said that every one of them, they're all women so far, has said, may I tell you I love you? Ah, that just touches my heart. And my sister says, of course you can, and I love you too. That's the connection. We just don't say it often enough to each other. And I just think it's beautiful when we acknowledge that. I say it quite often. I end my phone calls with my whole team that way, and my friends when I call on the phone, and they're just used to me now. We reserve that for loved ones, our family members, but what if we just let our light shine all the time and bubble over? We would feel more connection. So one other point there about my sister, she was hesitant to go out on her own, and we knew that she could do it. We tuned into spirit and got the guidance. But the biggest point is how anybody, all of us, can bring our spirituality, can bring our intuition into any job, like she has done in a beautiful way. So moment by moment, integrating that into your life, even if you feel your job isn't particularly spiritual. All right, how about a couple questions, Bev?
I'm just loving all the loving comments in our chat box.
I look forward to seeing them. I get to see them afterwards. I try not to look now because it distracts me. Thank you.
It's interesting. We have over 100 questions, and I always see the web at work here. when, 10 or so people ask the same question.
Oh, good.
And one of those is, when does the soul actually enter the human body?
I'm laughing, my lip twitched because I saw a question on the news, something about the moment of conception, and it snagged me, and I didn't pay attention at the time, but I'm just not surprised that it came up. Let me just ask perfectly. The moment of conception. Yeah, it's when the egg and the sperm form, and there's now need for a spirit to enliven that individuated aspect of consciousness. I am hearing that there are rare exceptions that the soul will just kind of slip in at the last moment, and that the mother's body keeps that growing, but that there is already show me, a bond forming soul to soul from being present in the womb. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Kristen asks, are past life regressions valid?
Wow. I'm taking my breath away with that one. Only you will know, they say. So those of you who need evidence, look for the evidence. It is possible, just as it is possible in mediumship readings, for your imagination to run amok. You will know by the unexpected nature, just as in a reading, of the information that comes through, and your ability to validate historical facts or facts that explain certain characteristics you have in your life, whether or not you can trust the story that has arisen. Is it helpful and healing?
Thank you.
Okay. Whew, that was okay. We're going to move on. This is taxing me. I want to make sure I can get through what I promised to share, and we'll answer some more questions as we go for sure. So, what about when it's hard to feel the love? Spirit has really shown me lately how it is such human nature to focus on the negative in others, even those we love with all our heart, even those we live with. It's just human nature, and it requires awareness of that nature and then the intention to overcome it. So if you're just not feeling the love, how do you see the soul in someone, even when you know we're all souls? And my guide said, focus on the virtues. I went online and found a website called the Virtues Project. If you want a list of what are the virtues, there are over 50 of them there, but pretty much think of any high frequency vibration: love, kindness, compassion, generosity, patience. Those are all virtues, and they are characteristics of the soul. So set the intention to focus only on your loved one's virtues. I love Ty with all my heart, but certain things had been dragging me down. We all have those vibrations, especially these days with the news and everything. So I said to Spirit, I'm going to give it a go. Let me tell you, I feel like we're on our honeymoon. I feel so much love overflowing for this man, because I hadn't realized how much I was being drawn to only see the downsides. I'm seeing so many upsides lately. It's amazing, but it takes awareness. So I would love to challenge you to do the same. Find somebody that we didn't have big friction. We weren't having arguments or anything. I just noticed things I'd been focusing on the negative. It was me, it was all me. But the beautiful thing is, once you start focusing on the positive, guess what happens? Those negative things aren't even showing up anymore. They don't need to, because I got the lesson. So try an experiment, focus, and find every virtue you can in those you live with and those you love, and watch how it comes flooding back at you. It's a beautiful thing. Alrighty. That's a pretty easy lesson, but boy, we forget it, huh? It's easy to forget. All right. Let's see. I asked Spirit, why is it so hard to remain in soul awareness? Oh my gosh, I mean, we talk to our guides all day long. Hopefully those of you who know my sip of the divine meditation are doing that daily. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to YouTube and search for Sip of the Divine with me. And it is an incredible tool for making the connection with higher consciousness. But why does it take so much work? And Spirit said, because it's so easy to slip into human mode. And they reminded me what it's like when we go to a movie theater. Why do we like going to the movies? Because you just can go and sit down in the chair and you don't have to make any effort. And all that drama is just right there. And you just get wrapped up in it. Welcome to being human, right? It's so easy to get sucked into the fascinating drama. Doesn't the media know that? They put it in your face all the time. So it takes effort, and that effort is so worth it for these kind of joyous moments. Again, if our guide spoke to us perfectly clearly, we wouldn't be celebrating Ilya Prigogine and whatever else you may have happen in your day. I hope that I'm modeling for you how to go out and have fun every day. Pray for the spirits, bring on the miracles. I literally pray that. I prayed it this morning. Bring it on, just like that. And they do, but it requires awareness. Okay. Okay, some more questions, Bev.
Okay. This is another one that several people have asked. I'll ask Dawn's. Suzanne, I've been trying to connect, in this case to her daughter, for over a year, but something is blocking me. How do we find what that block is and just be able to connect?
Okay. Know that it was several years before I connected with my own Susan. It just takes patience. Each person's journey is unique, and use the sip of the divine to say, what do I need to focus on today? You may not get that big answer all at once, but if you take it step by step, day by day, you'll clear out the layers that may be blocking you. We just don't know. So just remember, it is an ongoing journey. And even if you clear one big block, you may have a brief communication. It'll just keep getting better. So just enjoy the journey. I'm just getting new levels of clarity now that has me all excited because it's ongoing, upward and onward.
Thank you. This is a clarification question. It's anonymous, but Suzanne said she doesn't see loved ones. Does she mean that she doesn't see faces, but can see other things? For instance, she saw the image of a spade at the back of someone's head.
Yes, that's right. I don't see faces. And then I invite the guides, the spirits, to merge with me. They literally step in and we become one. And I see my own hands doing charades as if it's them. Very clearly see charades. I very clearly see images and memories that they put in my mind. Once in a while, I'll get brief images of a beard or a haircut or sparkling eyes or a big smile. So that gives me hope that I may see more and more. I never give up hope, and I try not to put in definitive words, I don't do this. So I like to say, at this time until now, I haven't been seeing faces. You see how I leave that open. But again, I've come to embrace it as a gift because it has allowed me to turn up the sensitivity in other areas.
Okay, thank you. Kathleen asks, when someone dies a violent death, whether it might be taking their own life with a gun or an accident, does the spirit leave the body before that violent act?
And you'll hear a great example of this in next month's session. but the guides say, they're showing me it's like a split awareness, that the human awareness remains with the body, but the soul often is immediately watching and observing. So there's, let me see, at the moment of death or before, they're twitching my lip and saying case by case basis, sometimes just before, sometimes right at the moment, sometimes after. But they just gave me the term retrograde amnesia, that even if the human is aware at the moment, immediately upon passing, that painful memories are erased. So when the spirits come through and say, I didn't suffer, trust them. Okay.
Wow,
All
thank
right.
you.
Let me go on, Bev, and we'll take some more questions in a little bit. So I've had quite a few people ask me about the origins of the coronavirus. Oh my. We're only going to go there for a minute. I have gone to my guides and asked them repeatedly because so many people have asked me, and I want to tell you exactly what they said by reading it so I get it right. They said, if you point fingers at one person or one group, it causes alienation. In the case of this illness, the end result, which is the here now of much growth, is what matters. People are coming together for solutions. Change is occurring. Realizations and insights are occurring. A shift in consciousness is occurring. This is evolution. So I said, so I don't need to know how or why it started, and you're not going to tell me, are you? I said to them. And they said no, because it's more important to focus on the growth that's happening and the opportunities that happen. I hear that, and my human side says that's a cop-out. But how can I get such clear answers in all other things? And then they showed me right after New Year's how we learn from our different points of view. And it was so interesting because we were sitting at the New Year's table, the dinner table. And it was really funny because everybody was talking about what a year it had been. My beloved husband said it was an awful year. And I looked at him and I said, it was a great year. And then I realized it is all point of view. From a personal standpoint, I know he would agree it was a great year. I was seeing it from a personal standpoint and from the soul's point of view of how much learning took place. Ty was seeing it from a group standpoint, a different standpoint, viewpoint. So when we try to come to consensus, to agreement on things, you can see how challenging it is when we all come from different points of view. The beautiful thing about communicating with spirit regularly is you come to know that we can change our point of view just like that, especially when our point of view causes us suffering. So what's causing you suffering? Shift your point of view above, like those in the moment of passing. Observe it from that neutral, detached, compassionate side and say, what is the lesson in this? What evolution can result from this? And definitely take that learning back with you, whatever insights you get, as you step back into your human role, and you'll see that your suffering has lessened. And then Spirit said, from each person's point of view, in that example on New Year's Day about what kind of year 2021 was, we were all correct. And they said, you cannot be incorrect without relationship. So do you want to always be right, or do you want to have relationships with each other? It goes with the territory and what opportunities our relationships offer us. Truly amazing. Okay, the same thing somebody asked somebody commented on one of the Daily Way messages where Spirit is often reminding us, you are never alone. And they said that they found that so comforting throughout these last 2 years of isolation. And it is so important for us to remember that, yes, in our human roles, we can feel very much alone. But this is the beauty of gatherings like this. We learn that we are so much more than only human. And it just takes that shift to soul awareness. In fact, let me show you how to do a shift. Right now, you're probably listening intently with your head. You're watching me on the screen. All of your senses are focused in the skull. But a wonderful, wonderful technique to truly feel your connection with others is to stop all thinking, block out all words, and drop in awareness to the heart area. Just let it settle right here. And now picture it like in that invocation we did, your rays flowing outwards, flowing through all other beings and all that you see. Feel a surge of connection in your heart, that love that we were talking about earlier. Practice this over and over and over throughout your day, dropping from the head where you're seeing, thinking, hearing. Drop your awareness from there to the heart and simply be in this heart space. Don't even allow words in, and feel yourself being the flow with all you see. Practice that until you actually feel a change with that. That will really help you understand the sense of oneness and how you can't really be alone. Okay. Take a couple more questions. And then I have a couple more big topics, even yet.
Okay. Paula asks, are the souls of identical twins or triplets really one soul, or two different souls deciding to be identical twins in this life?
Well, I'm getting major lip twitches as the guides say, trust this, it is one soul.
One soul. Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Interesting. Kristen asked, do souls ever choose abusive roles? Is that in a plan?
The guides say the soul knows that there will be a it's such a perfect lead-in for the next subject, a propensity towards lower frequency choices, those that are not in alignment with the soul and the virtues. And the soul goes willingly, knowing it has a great opportunity to uplift the choices. But the challenges are so great that many succumb to the lower choices. It is never a deliberate choice to perform evil acts. Okay.
Thank you.
And with that word evil, that leads me right into one of the promised topics this evening about a new way to look at darkness and evil. And it's not new at all. In fact, this coming Saturday, I'll be at Unity of Vero Beach giving my all-day Let Your Spirit Soar workshop. There are a few seats left. If you're in Florida and want to join us, check out Unity of Vero Beach for my events calendar. But I was going back over that course and had completely forgotten one of the teachings from that. It's one of my online courses as well. And it is that what we call darkness and evil spirits are real in the sense that we can't deny that darkness exists. But what darkness actually is the absence of light. You can bring in light, but you can't bring in darkness. Darkness occurs when there is an absence of light. So the main point is that light is a force. It is a power, but darkness has no real force of its own. So what do you do when something is absent? If you're experiencing darkness, fear, You don't bring in what's already here, what has no power. You bring in what's missing, the light. So people fear evil spirits when you realize that that vibration is just evidence of a lack of light and has no real power. You call on your innate power and the power of the light of consciousness itself. That's what we're talking about with light. To do what it does best and shine. So just watch how we humans give so much power to something that truly can affect us. But that's because we allow it to. Bring in the light of awareness and you're truly reclaiming your own power. So I hope that just gives you a way of seeing that in a wholly new light. All right. Speaking of events, perhaps you can join me at the Omega Institute in New York. I've given workshops there before, and I'm giving my Making the Connection workshop 3 days in July 8, 9, and 10. And I would love to share some of these techniques in person with all of you. It's a really cool place where you stay on campus and we all eat in one big dining room. It's like summer camp all over again. But Omega is wonderful, and I like to hang out in the gift shop and bookstore there. It's a wonderful place. So another topic, is there really power in group intention? Boy, is there. I believe I've already shared in the past how when I taught a workshop in Utah this past summer, we decided to see if there really was power in groups of 8. Lynn McTaggart has a wonderful book called The Power of 8. And one woman had asked that we pray for her son who had a physical challenge. And I said, how about if we form groups of 8 from the whole group of about 75 people? And we all go around in these groups of 8 and mention somebody who needs uplifting. And these groups of 8 will focus their intention on healing those specific people for 10 minutes. We did that, and later that afternoon, one of the women in the class shared a drawing that had been texted to her. She has an autistic daughter who was at home, and at the exact time that those groups of 8 were standing in circles praying, her autistic daughter did a crayon drawing of 8 people standing in a circle. That blew me away. I shared that with a class I just did a couple weekends ago in Charleston, South Carolina. We decided to see what would happen if the entire class held the intention as a group that each of us were healed of something blocking us from connecting with spirit. In other words, we were going to uplift each other. Every one of us would take our focus off ourselves and help to heal the blocks in each other. We held the focus for 10 minutes. That was a perfect way to practice focus, which is a key practice for connecting across the veil. You want to remain focused. So every time we found our minds wandering, those were the instructions given. We brought it right back to, we are removing blocks from everyone in this room from connecting with spirit. Now, what I had learned is that when we take the focus off ourselves, we experience more of that oneness. And immediately after that exercise, one of the participants came up to me in tears saying, Suzanne, I experienced this bliss. I hadn't told the class about this oneness side benefit. She said, it was as if I left my body, I dissolved, there was no separation. It was a bliss and a connection like I've never felt before. So what does that tell us? Not only about the power of groups, but the power of getting your focus off yourself and trying to heal others. It comes back to you anyway. Then I got in the elevator on the break immediately after that, and a woman came in to the elevator with me, and she said, Suzanne, I have to share with you what happened. My brother passed in November, she said, and I just cannot accept that he is gone. I can't do it. And I wondered why I even came to this class when, how can I connect with him if he's not really dead? I was just stuck. And she said, in the middle of that group intention setting, I felt this swirling light come up around me in a spiral, all around my body. It made me buzz. And I felt this opening at the crown, and all this energy just shot out the top of me. And Suzanne, it's gone. That block is gone. I know my brother is gone. I know he has passed, and I know now he's okay. I mean, this woman was crying. That was a miracle for her. And it just showed the power of intention. If only one person in that group of 80 people was healed that day, that was enough for me. But that was just the only report I heard immediately. I love to think that all of us got a little bit extra clarity because of that. So that's a practice I'm going to continue in future classes. And I challenge you again, another homework assignment. See if you can gather a group of 5 to 10 people, even if it's online, and set the intention of healing for others in the group or loved ones attached to others in the group. And for 10 minutes, maintain a focus on that. We call it prayer, right? But it's really intention setting and trusting the universe and the power of groups, and see what happens. We are co-creators of miracles, so let's harness that. So let's see, tomorrow, if any of you have taken any of my Shift Network classes, tomorrow I'm doing an online introduction to a new course I'll be introducing in March. Actually, I'm not quite sure how you'll get to see that. Watch your email. They'll be playing a replay soon if you're not already invited to tomorrow. But in preparing for this new course, which is a deeper dive into mediumship, I was reviewing one of the readings that I had done recently. In my upcoming course, we're going to dissect some of my readings and some of the participants' readings. So I'm watching this full-length reading of mine, and I had completely forgotten that in the middle of that reading, I said to my client, I'm hearing the name Krusty. Does that have any meaning to you? And the client said, no. And I said, well, it's kind of funny because I have a dear friend named Krusty. He's even mentioned in my book, Wolf's Message. Charles Cunis is his real name, but we all call him Krusty. And he's about 80 years old, I think, and has some trouble with Parkinson's. And so I wondered, could that have been his name that was coming up in the middle of the reading? But like I said, I forgot that it came up in that reading. Since I did the reading, we had learned that Krusty had taken a fall recently and had to go into rehab for a broken coccyx. Suddenly I wondered, what date did I do this reading, and what date did Krusty fall? Well, once again, I bet you're psychic enough to know the answer. I went back, it was easy to find the date of the reading. It was October 30th. And I picked up my phone and I called Krusty's wife and said, what day did he land in the hospital? She said, oh, that's easy. That was October 30th. So what happens when we connect across the veil? Even if you're doing a reading for somebody else, you are wide open to the entire field of which we're all a part. We are all interconnected souls. If you've gotten anything from this evening, it's how the web works, how we are, that's the oneness, right? And so we can set the intention when we connect across the veil. May I only tune into those present with me here. But every once in a while, when we have a really strong heart connection with someone, or something happens that may lead to something magical in the future, other stuff from the sea of consciousness that we're all part of sneaks in. So it was really fun to let Krusty know that at the soul level, his soul was letting me know, hey, something's happened to your buddy over here. I thought that was very cool. All right. Take just a couple more questions and I'm going to give you a really great tool to practice presence. All right.
Okay, this one is anonymous, but asks, what's the best way to approach someone who is grieving and you would like to help them with evidence from across the veil, but they may not be open to this at all?
Just tread very carefully, do it from the heart, drop down into that heart space like I showed you how to do earlier, moment by moment test with your guides. What are the best words to use for this person? Because it could be different with everyone. And you just gently say, I'm aware of some information that sometimes I can tune into from the non-physical dimensions. Would it be okay with you if I share this with you? And if they say no, just lovingly back off and don't take it personally.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly asks, when a woman is pregnant, when she passes the veil, like your Susan, is there a birthing process on the other side?
Interesting. The imagery I see immediately is this. Not at all. It's just the dissolution of the body. The souls have no body, and they're just light to light, aware, present with each other. Yeah. Nice question.
Yeah.
Okay. So I promised you a great tool for practicing presence, and pretty much you have the tool near at hand. I have noticed that when I use voice to text, for some reason, I don't look at the phone. I hold it out here and I just talk. When I press that little microphone so you can do voice to text, and ask my lovely Bev and Lynette how many of my texts come across looking ridiculous, because I forget to even check. And the guides recently said everything that happens moment to moment can be a tool for your awareness. Pay attention to your texts. So now I'm practicing 20 times a day, watching the screen as I type. And it's amazing how I'm still not getting it every time. So there's always more to learn. But I hope you can see how we can bring presence into our normal mundane tasks. Why would we want to? Because when you're present and your mind is not wandering and you're not multitasking, you'll hear those guides more clearly. You'll notice those subtle nudges that you're giving them. If I can't even pay attention to focus on one task at a time like that, I wonder what I'm missing. So I hope that you'll try it and use that as a nice little tool. I believe I have one more thing I wanted to share with you. Oh, just that I hope always that I can model for you, as you've asked the questions this evening, to trust that your guides are right here. And you notice I tune in, and some of those answers I gave you tonight were pure channeling, word for word from them, because I didn't know the answer. Well, earlier this week, I needed to make some promotional videos for the Shift Network for this new course that starts in March. They wanted me to do 8 separate videos in one sitting. They were going to record it and sent a producer on Zoom to meet with me. And the producer said, did you get the scripts? Just an outline of what they wanted me to talk about, not the words. I had to fill in the content. And I said, yes, I got that, but I don't like to operate that way. I would like to channel these videos. And the producer looked kind of excited and said, oh, okay. And I realized that this is how I teach my classes these days. So don't need a syllabus, just let spirit guide you. And I want to again challenge you to live that way. You don't have to be stilted like I did when I got some of those answers. Just merge with them and say, may your words be my words, as you do what's natural. The difference is when Bev asked the question and I didn't know the answer, I was carefully tuning in. But to speak on topics of mediumship for a promotional video, we can just flow, the guides and I. So it was really fun. I sat down, I said, okay, what's the next one? And they said, okay, for this one, we want you to bring up a concept that you will be talking about in the course and just explain that concept for 3 minutes. And I said, okay, you ready, team? The concept is coherence. Start recording. Boom. And it was just fun and it just flowed. And I'm just kind of listening, but it just flowed like that. And I want to tell you that when we were finished, you know, like, all right, next, the producer looked at me and she said, this usually takes hours. We're done in 32 minutes. So you can see how working with your guides will make your life much more efficient. And I wasn't always this way. I used to have a script. When I first started giving talks at Unity churches 10 years ago, I wrote them out word for word. I practiced them for timing. Now it's, okay, guys, we need 20 minutes and we'll end with 20 minutes to the second with no notes. Set that as your intention to get that way with everything you do in your life, that you're guided by spirit. Why is that possible to do that? How is it possible? Because you are spirit. If we can get our human side out of the way and have a miracle mindset and truly with awareness, work with your team moment to moment, life is miraculous. So I've truly enjoyed this connection this evening. I hope you felt my love spewing out all over you. I've felt it coming back from you, and I thank you so much. I thank Bev and Lynette, and Bev will work on the video. The link will come out by Friday by email, so keep an eye on your email, and hope to see you back here next month and on my Facebook page and maybe at some in-person events. I'll look forward to reading the chat, and thank you all for being here. Bev, Lynette, you want to say good night?
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you next month.
Yay. Okay, we love you and good night.